think I copied the state board link. So I actually do think it was, which might have been an issue, but it's okay. We figured it out. All right, I am chatting again. Oh, there it is. Our brief agenda, and this is amended from what was shared before. Again, we discussed concerns around the master work plan, and so we want to revisit our timelines, as well as this question around, are there other things we should change? So one thought I had that I will just throw out there is, should we just focus on a survey? Should we just focus on focus groups? Or are we committed to doing both? So that is an open question. And then the second agenda item is around our survey questions, and you'll see them linked there. So for the first, just to recap, there is concern that the master work plan is too much for staff capacity and us as a board to take on. And so admin is making recommendations for changes. What thoughts do we have around changes we might propose for our committee, if any?
Is it possible to get a little more detail on what the conflicts are, where they are?
I mean, yeah, we could pull the master work plan. My only concern is I don't want us to worry about the master work plan. I would rather this group just worry about the committee's timelines, but we could pull that for reference if that would be helpful.
How do we, okay, I guess I am maybe missing something. I don't understand how we know what needs to be changed if we don't know where the conflicts are.
John Paul, I think this would also help me answer that question, Emily. What's the staff's recommendation for what we focus on?
So no more than 2 major projects from now until July.
Right. Sorry for this committee. No,
in general, like agency wide.
Yes.
We can only work on 2 major projects at a time. So, I mean, I think we have to focus right on the things that already have timelines established. So this committee in particular has to have some priority because there is a deadline to June, right? Like we have to do this. The social studies work is what I would consider right now at a sort of minor project. And so we can continue that the way that it's been timelined because we've already planned for it. And so I think that's fine. So then we need sort of one more sort of major project that we can work on. And I heard some really interesting discussion at the working session about, the potential of combining some of the ideas from various committees, like a survey or doing those types of things. And I think that's the right, I'm hoping that that's the direction we move into because I don't want to lose the projects that we're talking about because they're all really interesting and really good things. But I think there's probably going to be some compromise and sacrifice of doing everything or doing a little bit on everything. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure. So for this committee, I'm hearing, because it is very time sensitive, right? We would then go back to everybody, the whole board, and ask for them to prioritize the resources being spent for us to be able to do a survey and or a focus group. But one big project, and I think this is the question I share with Emily, would be if we're prioritizing this because it is time sensitive, how much staff capacity is there to actually work on either a survey or a focus group if it's one of the 2 major projects?
I mean, I think if this committee does a survey or focus group, I think that needs to be sort of the one extra big project that we continue to do for until June, right? Because remember too, in addition to being just a limited time, we also will be down 1 staff member because Alex will be on maternity leave or paternity leave. And so we have less capacity during the time that this committee needs to be working hard. And so I think if we pick a bigger project that's sort of more long-term, that's more planning right now and implementation in the fall or something like that, I think that's where the balance is going to come up. And it's hard for me to see, because, you know, not every project that has been proposed by the committees is equal in terms of needs of time from staff and times from board members and all these types of things, right? So it's hard for me to say this project over this project or those types of things, because frankly, I don't really think it's a good role for me or for anyone in staff to say this project should get priority over another. That really needs to fall within the members themselves.
So there's a bit of a, I guess the question for me then is the ask from our team today to find ways to reduce the workload that we're proposing, or are we saying we're assuming that because this is time sensitive, this is going to be one of the two main projects we're pushing, and we plan around whatever the staff capacity could be for one of the two main projects?
I mean, I personally think this is not like, you know, whatever, but I think the recommendation from this committee to the admin committee should be, this is a priority of the board. We made it clear. And this is one of the things that that should continue, period. Like, this is what we have planned to do. This should be one of the major projects that we do.
And I would say it's been said, and it's true, that this is the only COVID school reopening issue that the board is tackling in the immediate term, which to me just speaks to the significance of doing it. I'm not sure if you had another question, Alistair, but if not, I would throw one out there to John Paul for clarity. Did you have another question, Alistair? Okay. John Paul, just want to make sure I'm clarifying. So let's say we decide to go forward with the survey. It seems like you are of the mind or like the idea of combining forces of surveys, or like instead of doing 3 separate ones, maybe we do one comprehensive survey. I just wanted to make sure I was interpreting that right.
I think we can, yes. And I think if we are going to do a survey, I'm not sure that combining this one, the one that we're planning for this group, or focus groups for this group, should be combined with other things, because I do think having a clarity of what we're asking for with the reopening would be helpful. But I think some of the other committees have mentioned surveys on sort of plethora of topics. And I think that lends itself well to potentially adding questions in together. You know, one of the cautions that we have, though, is like how deep we can get into information that we're asking in a survey when we really only have 50 questions that we can ask, and probably 8 of those at least are demographic. So, you know, if we're talking about 40 to 42 questions divided by 7 topics, like how much good research are you going to be able to get out of that? And I think that's another thing that needs to be considered and talked about. I mean, if we're not going to get the data that we want out of a survey, then we shouldn't ask those questions, and maybe those questions can wait for a survey till, you know, the next fiscal year or something like that.
I guess I'm less optimistic that there's a easy way to combine all the different surveys proposed, because we're also asking, we're all focusing on different audiences, right? If this group is thinking about principles, and other folks are not, it's not one survey then, right? I mean, you basically have to run, either we all agree on who the target audience is for our surveys, and everybody in all the groups decide to kind of adjust our focus to that audience, or I'm not sure what that would look like for us to combine surveys, John Paul.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And I think that's one of the reasons why I mentioned, I think this survey for this group should probably be separated, because it is definitely a different type of group that we had talked about. One of the things that I did hear from staff when we went through things is that if we're asking principals, does it make more sense, since, you know, the members generally have established relationships already with the principals, to do it as a, you know, phone survey type thing? So each member would call the principals in their ward or area to do this rather than setting up a link? Would that help in terms of gathering the information in a way that is deeper and richer than an electronic survey? Maybe, but I think that's one of the things that we can also talk about in terms of how do we work for this particular group to make it work.
Okay.
So
Just,
I've just been listening, and here are my sort of like top level thoughts on our committee and prioritization. Like, this committee has a time limited role. And so I think we should ask for priority for the timeline we've talked about because it is a time limited committee. So that's one thought. The second is, I like this idea, John Paul, of some sort of phone follow-up with the principals. But what I wonder about is, rather than doing a phone survey, could we do an open survey link to principals? And then in lieu of focus groups, could we have members do follow-up calls with principals in their wards to get more color commentary on survey responses so that we could get some more confidential information? Emily, I think this goes to some of what you've cautioned us about, which is principals may be reluctant to share in focus groups or to share about things that they worry are controversial, but might be more willing to tell us. So maybe we do an open survey followed by follow-up phone calls with members. And that could also be a way to bear the load more evenly on the work for this project while keeping the timeline. So those are my two big thoughts, just having listened to everybody's ideas and wonderings.
And it seems like you're getting a lot of people agreeing with that approach.
Hey, listen, for 8:30 on a Monday morning on my first cup of coffee, I feel pretty good about that.
And I'm jealous that you're already on your first and I haven't had any.
Being with mom who made it for me is helpful.
Very true. Okay, so it sounds like we're saying we are going to recommend that we stick with our survey timeline. However, and it seems like people are agreeing with this idea of, in lieu of focus groups, we go with the follow-up phone calls from members. Can people just give a voice? Yes, you support that?
Yes.
Emily gave a thumbs up. Okay, great. All right, thank you. Second, so that's the first issue. I feel very clear there. The second issue is to just take a peek at the link that you all have seen before. Thanks for your suggestions and feedback. As I mentioned before, we just wanted to go through and just solidify which questions will we ask. So let's take 2 minutes to just review the questions that are here in the comments, just to kind of refresh. And then we can just quickly go through and say, these are the questions we want to be on the survey. And then Alistair and I can work with John Paul on format approach and get something back to you. So 2 minutes and then we'll jump in. Okay, so that's been a minute and a half. I'm going to break my own rule and suggest we jump in. Okay, so as I scan this, it seems like our questions build on each other nicely, in my opinion. But this is what I'm thinking we can do. Can each of us, now that we've gone through and read it, if you have the feature, and Alistair, may be tough for you. Oh no, it seems like you're in front of your computer now. Can we go through and just highlight green the questions that we would support? And then I'm thinking step back and just talk about them. And there's this one question that I wrote that I saw, Jessica, your comment around like changing to distinguish between hiring additional FTEs and maintaining current staff. Yes, I like that suggestion. So let's just assume we tweak it, and we could wordsmith it, but let's assume that that is what that question would ask.
Okay. One question just going into this, Zachary, is mindful that now we're talking about follow-up phone calls. We have the room to dig deep on some folks' open response answers. Do you have a vision in
Hey, John
mind?
Paul, would you mind resharing the link for me? I lost it, and thanks.
Do you have a vision in mind of whether we're asking mostly short answer questions or longer response questions? Because I think if we're doing longer response questions, we want fewer.
That is a great question.
I
could be
think the
honest, I haven't
latter,
given a lot
I mean,
of thought, but as I'm looking at this, it does look like these are more open-ended questions.
yeah.
I'm sorry, Emily.
I was gonna say some of them I could imagine being drop-down boxes with, you know, we have a sense of what the issues are, and I think we could, with some of them, make them less open-ended and more choose the ones that are most pressing for you or whatever the question is, and then with an option to add something. So that's just one thought of turning some of these into more short form answers. But I do think they should, for the survey, and to your point, Jessica, if we're following up, it makes sense that I think people are just more likely to, you know, do the survey if it's easier, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
No, but that's a good push. And we can tailor it so that they're not overwhelmed with open-ended questions. So again, if we could just go through, highlight green the questions you think should definitely be added, and then we can have a discussion about it.
Anonymous Dolphin, I see you highlighting the social emotional needs question. I'm just curious if we should move those into a separate bucket that's focusing on SEO.
I'm not sure who Anonymous Dolphin is. Did someone just highlight the SEO focus?
Okay.
Emily, are you there?
I'm here, and I was just gonna say, I think in terms of organizing, that whoever we hire to do this will do that for us, unless there's something really specific that we wanted. I don't know if we need to worry about that. I don't know. Just
Alistair, are you getting at the fact that it wasn't, that is not school funding related?
Yeah.
well, my whole section is not school related. I mean, funding related. Sorry. As well, and I don't know if I had the SEL one, but I think this would be, yeah, like two sections. Or maybe we need more than 2 sections, but I don't think do we need to worry about that level of detail, John Paul, or is that something that the vendor kind of manages?
So I think that's that's part of the question. Are we sending this to a vendor, or are we just doing it through?
Oh. Yeah.
I would
I thought-
advocate we don't. I would advocate we create a survey in one of the popular formats. We could use Google Forms, or we could use
Okay.
SurveyMonkey. Scott Goldstein actually called us out on this on Twitter in our meeting the other night. I don't know if anyone else saw it, but he has a tweet basically about how the state board needs to do more delegation of work to community partners, which I found interesting, but also a note around not necessarily expecting all surveys to be scientific. And on this particular one, I concur. I think our goal here is to hear from a slice of our constituency, our principals, about what they need. And I think these popular survey tools would be a good way to get that done, especially given the timeline we need to get it done on. That's my 2 cents.
That's interesting. I mean, just that comment, and that actually helps a lot in terms of funding. Like, we wouldn't need to ask for a budget for that, which is weirdly large, right? That's
Right. We just need to, those of us on this call now, though, just need to do some extra work to
right.
sort it
Okay.
out. Right? So
Cool.
That also changes the way that I would think about how we phrase some of the questions, Jessica. I think I agree, because it wouldn't come to like a scientific, like, 70% of principals considered leaving the profession kind of a thing is not the point, right?
That's right.
It's more about building in feedback loops, right? So
yeah, and I think here, I can't remember exactly where this came up. I think this was Ebony Rose's push in our working session, which is essentially like, to whom will we give this feedback? Well, some of this is about what do principals need. So we'll want to make sure LEA leaders like the chancellor and our charter leaders get this, but also we want to make sure that there are efficiencies gained at the state level. So we'll want to share this with the deputy mayor's office to say, if there are some things that could be leveraged cross sector, we want to do that too. So I think some of it here is, given our audience, what we're looking for is not so much a scientific, statistically representative sample, so much as it is practical, tactical. How do you spend this to get what your leaders need?
Yep.
I wish I had just typed what you said, Jessica, because I think that could have been the top of the survey to
I
explain.
realized I was kind of quoting Hamilton, the practical, tactical. No, just me that has memorized the lyrics to Hamilton. Okay.
Definitely not you, but do you care trying to repeat that, what you just said?
I am happy to draft what I think I just said in an email and send it to all of us now.
Okay, cool. For the sake of time, it seems like we've highlighted the questions that really resonate with us. Here's my recommendation of what we do. My recommendation would be for Alistair, John Paul, and I to kind of wordsmith these so that they are the right mix of drop downs versus open-ended. But at least we have a sense of the questions that we want to go for. Are there any questions that are not represented currently that we think we should be asking if we want to get to this idea of how school leaders are wanting or needing to use federal funds?
I am noticing that none of us are from east of the river, and it might be useful to ask some of our reps from east of the river to chime in on this, just because they may have different, hearing different things that would inform the kinds of questions that they would pose.
Yeah, I'm happy to circle back. We did ask folks to jump in the document, but I know sometimes
well, you
it's
know how that
a
is.
challenge. So I will give Ebony, Jock, and Carlene a call to just make sure we're not missing something that might be relevant to them.
And just Emily, Jessica, I think as part of the wordsmith thing effort, I think I may recommend that we either cut back on or shorten this. My take is with a lot of open-ended questions, we're asking for people to, like you said, Emily, it's easier with the drop down, but things like the first few that are highlighted, right? Those are, to me, some of the most interesting ones, and I'd find it really important that folks take the time to share with us what, because we don't know what we don't know, and that's the one place that we can actually get that. So the rest feels a little bit more like guided, right? What's everyone's take on that?
What do you mean by guided?
Less open-ended.
I'm sorry, wait, so you're saying like the first two at the very top, what are the needs of your school
Yeah,
that you are hoping federal funds can help with are really clear? And then you're saying going on, it feels more open-ended.
it feels less like we're guiding the conversation around how federal funds would be used directly, right?
Right, but yeah, I guess I am still not 100% on board with that focus. So that's why. But yeah, I mean, I think we want to know both. But I don't see a lot. I mean, I don't think this is a lot for a survey, actually, if as long as they're not open-ended, where there's not more than one or two that are open-ended.
Okay.
But I do think they need to be wordsmithed. I mean, can we do that between now and our next meeting? Or does that need to happen?
Zachary, John Paul, I mean, we had the schedule until 9. Are you guys, or 9:30? Are you two available to work on this?
I would rather not do it right this minute.
Okay.
But what I was saying before, I think Alistair, John Paul, and I can wordsmith it and get some. I just think fewer people working on something sometimes is better than trying to get a lot of people work on something and then share it back and react to it would be my recommendation. And
okay, so then the other pieces we need, if the three of us are wordsmithing the questions, Jessica, since you already said it, would you mind just typing up who the intended audience is? We can just share that at the top.
Yep,
like
doing so right now.
Amazing. And as part of that, then Jessica, also kind of an overview of the goal of why we're running this. I think we've written that out a bit, but I think a little bit more context, either in the email that we send out to the principals or on top of the survey would be helpful. And then we come up with the survey, and then we're done. Yeah, I mean, we start sharing it,
and then we're done. Yeah.
Okay.
Our goal is by end of April, and so I think we have time. I would say, I know story time is happening this week, but certainly by the end of the week, I'm feeling like John Paul, Alistair, and I can sync and get a finalized list of these questions back to you all, just as a final thumbs up opportunity. John Paul, does that seem doable for you? Okay, Alistair.
And then, in which case, John Paul, for the ask in terms of money and staff time for this, it's basically nothing, right?
Well, money, it's definitely nothing. Staff time, it's mostly my calendar, and so I can do that. But
sorry, you're not nothing.
As Jessica said in the chat, Friday is a DC holiday, so we won't be. The office will not be open, and I will not be working. And so we just need to remember that Thursday is really the drop dead day.
Got it. Okay. Well, I think we're good for the two objectives we have for this meeting. Just to recap what we discussed and agreed to, we are going to recommend sticking with our timeline for this survey, which is to complete it by the end of April. And we, in lieu of the focus groups that we have originally planned to do, we are going to do member-led follow-ups. That is going to be important to get buy-in from other members, but I don't anticipate that being a problem. And then secondly, we've gone in and highlighted the questions that we want for the survey. John Paul, Alistair, and I will get something back to the committee by Thursday, end of day Thursday. And then we'll go from there.
Can I just
Great.
say, I think, oh, sorry, I think we
Sorry.
win the most focused committee meeting award for this meeting.
Well, I'm trying to give folk time back. So thank you all. I know early meetings are not always the best, but thank you all for.
Zachary, before you hop off, can the three of us just set a time at least for when we can chat next and
Yes.
sort this all out?
Yes. Thanks, Jessica and Emily.
Okay,
Yep,
sure.
thank you. I'm
We're
going to push
done.
send on this so you have my draft language and wordsmith as you see fit.
You're
Bye.
wonderful. Thank you.
Bye. See you guys later.
Finally.